Hello and welcome to Tambuku Kennel's YouTube channel. I'm Sean Hall, and today I would like to discuss an issue that affects and will affect many of us who breed dogs. Although today's video concerns issues relating to a puppy contract, it really is about mistaken trust. And I'm sharing this story in order to help prevent someone else repeating the same mistake. The story revolves around an agreement between myself and a puppy buyer concerning one particular puppy. For decades, I've insisted on written contracts. I don't breed many litters. In fact, I breed very few. And because I mainly use AI, I usually only get between 2 or 3 puppies per litter. I have typically kept these when they come, but when I have more than this in a litter, then I'm forced to sell. Every puppy that leaves me leaves with a written agreement. That contract identifies both parties. It records our addresses, our identity numbers, our telephone numbers, the puppy's registered details, its microchip, its registration details. In fact, everything necessary is recorded in the contract. The contract also explains how I expect the dog to be cared for, such as its nutrition, its veterinary care, its vaccinations, exercise, training, and general welfare. Most importantly, there is one clause that has always been particularly important to me. If an owner can no longer keep one of my dogs, I want that dog returned to me, not because I want to interfere in people's lives or because I want control over them, but because I remain responsible for every puppy I bring into this world. In over 40 years of breeding, I have never had to forcibly remove a dog from anyone. The clause exists simply to ensure that none of my dogs ever ends up abandoned, neglected, or passed from home to home. Towards the end of 2024, my bitch, Tambuku Sunset Shimmer, or Gretel, produced a litter of 7 puppies. Among them was an exceptional male. I named him Orion. He was, in my opinion, one of the finest males I've bred. He was masculine, elegant, and exactly the kind of dog I hoped would contribute to my breeding program in the future. For that reason, I wasn't looking for just any buyer. I wanted a home where he would be loved, properly cared for, health tested, and where I would retain access to him for future frozen semen collection. I turned away several prospective buyers. Eventually, someone from my childhood and young adulthood contacted me. Because of that history, I trusted him. Before they traveled to collect Orion, I emailed them my contract. I explained very clearly that the puppy would not leave my property unless the contract was signed, and they agreed to that. They traveled from a neighboring country to the north to collect him. When they arrived to collect the puppy, they produced the money. But when I asked for the contract, as agreed, they stated that they refused to sign it. The objection centered on the clause requiring Orion to come back to me if they could no longer keep him. I explained why that clause existed. It protects the dog. It has nothing to do with taking dogs away from responsible owners. Eventually, we reached what I believed was an agreement. They agreed that Orion would remain available for semen collection for my breeding program, that they visit family in Western Cape and would bring him back to collect the frozen genetics, and also that we would renegotiate the contract to suit all of us and that it would be signed and binding. On this understanding, I accepted payment. They took Orion home. Looking back, that was my mistake. I accepted trust instead of insisting on a signed contract immediately, before payment and before they took the puppy. For a short while, everything appeared normal. I received a photograph of Orion running happily on their farm months after they took him. Then my own life changed dramatically. I lost my accommodation. For several months, I was effectively homeless with my dogs. Through the kindness of one friend overseas, I managed temporary accommodation in a series of self-catering facilities before eventually finding somewhere more permanent. Naturally, my attention was focused on simply surviving, and communication with them faded. Many months later, I received an unexpected request. They wanted Orion's registration papers. They explained they needed them to register puppies. I was stunned. This was the first time I learned Orion had already been bred. To my knowledge, none of the conditions I had expected had been fulfilled. There was no hip scoring, no elbow grading, no genetic testing, no approval of the mating, no lifting of the breeding restriction, and from my perspective, they had simply just bred him without papers and without even consulting me. Responsible breeding isn't simply putting a male and a female together. Good breeders try to reduce inherited disease, such as hip dysplasia, elbow dysplasia, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, degenerative myelopathy, exclusion of the recessive blue gene, hemophilia, and other inherited conditions. Some diseases remain hidden for generations due to their recessive nature. Two apparently healthy dogs can produce severely affected puppies if they both carry the same harmful recessive gene. Health testing helps reduce that risk. It isn't a guarantee, but it is responsible practice. Let's talk briefly about South African law and recognized breeding standards. In South Africa, a sale agreement is generally governed by the common law of contract. A written contract records the rights and obligations of both parties and can provide important evidence if a dispute arises. Animals are generally regarded as property in South African private law, but that does not mean owners can treat them however they wish. Laws such as the Animal Protection Act 71 of 1962 makes it an offense to cause unnecessary suffering or to neglect an animal. Welfare obligations continue regardless of who owns the dog. Within the pedigreed dog community, KUSA's Code of Ethics encourages responsible breeding. It supports the use of written agreements, maintaining proper records, placing breeding restrictions where appropriate, and taking reasonable steps to reduce inherited disease through appropriate health testing. My own contract goes further than the minimum, and that's my choice as a breeder. It reflects the standards I expect before one of my dogs is used in a breeding program or even before the puppy leaves my home. Whether every term would ultimately be enforceable in court would depend on the wording of the agreement and the facts of a particular case. But the lesson is clear. If those terms matter to you, make sure that they are agreed to and signed before the puppy leaves. I think that the most important lesson to come of this series of events is that one should never, ever even consider handing over a puppy without a signed contract. Never. Not for a friend, not for family, not for someone one has known most of one's life. Business is business, and our business as responsible breeders is to protect the welfare and future of the puppies that we produce. Furthermore, a contract protects both parties. It removes misunderstanding, it records expectations, And most importantly, it protects the dog. My recommendations are simple. Use a written contract. In it, identify the parties clearly, describe the puppy, and record the microchip and registration details. State your health requirements, state your breeding restrictions, state what happens if the owner can no longer keep the dog. The best option is that the dog reverts back to your ownership. Make sure that you have every page initialed. Have the agreement signed and dated. Only after the signed contract is in your possession should you accept payment and release the puppy. Never reverse that order. That's the lesson I learned. I hope that Orion is healthy. I hope every puppy he has sired grows into a healthy, loved companion. That has always been my concern. I've created this video to encourage responsible breeding and responsible ownership. If sharing my experience prevents even one breeder from making the mistake I made, then telling the story has been worthwhile. Thank you for watching. Over the years, many people have asked me what is in my puppy contract. So in the next stream, I'll go through my puppy contract, explaining why each provision is there and how it has developed over decades of breeding Rhodesian Ridgebacks. If you found this discussion useful, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and comment in the comment section. Until next time, cheers.